Yeah.
Be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to go. Oh, okay. Well, you have nice hair. Don't do that. Do.
You were taller.
Oh, yeah, I'm short. So who sees the top of your head?
Well, if I sit down. And if you go to Jack and Box on Beamer Road, and you look at the camera.
You can see. Are you serious?
That was trauma for me 15 years ago.
Turn around. Good. Compare with Chuck here. She's got big glasses. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that would be, well, I have a customer the other day, he wanted to see the, like his. So I did the. Is that? Well, yeah, why? And he goes. Are you ready, friends?
I am ready if you.
You're ready, okay.
All right, we're going to get started. We're going to call the City Council regular meeting Thursday, April 17th to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I think Bill Schreiber is here to lead us in prayer. Welcome, Mr. Schreiber.
Thank you. Let us pray. Lord, we give thanks to you for bringing our community together in this honored tradition of self-governance. May our elected officials, staff, citizens, and guests look to Solomon for wisdom. Remind us of having ears to hear, and we ask you to provide us with divine understanding of God's will. And as is his will, we pray that we are filled with the undeserved grace, abundant peace, and complete understanding of our neighbors' perspectives. Guide us to be good stewards of your creation. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
My favorite Bible verse, Bill.
It is mine too. I love that one.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 3, which is a presentation. We have guests from the Port of Corpus Christi Authority here to give council a presentation on all things Port of Corpus Christi. Just so you all know, this is Kent Britton, the CEO, Port of Corpus Christi, for those of you who do not know him. Council, this is going to be an informational session for you. You will have the ability after he is finished to answer questions, and I encourage that. I think he has a lot of information, but there's not audience participation. So certainly y'all are all here, and I'm glad you're all here because I think as much information that they can share is important, but the question and answer period will just be for council and staff. So I just want to make that clear before we get started. So with that, Mr. Britton, take it away.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me out here. I don't think I've been out here since the first month after I got this job, which is telling someone today I presented State of the Port in Sandpack County for lunch today, and someone said, "How long you've been?" And it was 23 months, and my wife's getting tired of me saying months like I got a kid or something. So once I get to 24, I'm going to just change that to 2 years. So it's been almost 2 years. June 1st will be 2 years. I was the CFO at the port. Prior to that, and before that, I worked on the other side of the bay in Gregory at Sherwin Aluminum, which was it's kind of the industry I'd been in my whole life. I worked for Alcoa, the big aluminum company for quite a while. So probably a little overdue. And I think what I told the council then, anytime you want us to come out and talk about issues that are impacting your community, I am more than happy to do so. We do engage with many of the folks who are sitting behind me. Hopefully not going to throw anything at me, but we do try to engage with them on an informal basis also. And I think I told the group 2 years ago, we want to be partners with the communities we work in. So I'll talk through that in a slide here in just a second and then explain. I'm going to take you through a few things. I assume Can you guys see the presentation or can you only see it back there?
Yeah, we'll see.
All
Just
right.
that, one, yeah,
Um,
unless it's on their laptop.
so there is always a lot of talk about who is the Port of Corpus Christi and what can the Port of Corpus Christi do? And so I will tell you, and this is what my lawyer, who's Jimmy Welder with Welder Lushing, would tell me, is if it's not written in chapter 60 and 62 of the water code, then we probably shouldn't be doing it. And so when I talk about what's our role, it's really these three things. One is non-federal sponsor of the ship channel, which is the most important asset that we have. That's what enables commerce to flow in and out of the Port of Corpus Christi. Landlord for economic development purposes, we do own 30,000 acres of land. About 55% of that is submerged and about 45% of that is emerged uplands. And then we're a builder and maintainer of infrastructure. So think docks and warehouses and laydown areas and those kind of things. In the bottom left, you see we're an independent political subdivision of the state of Texas, which is an interesting construct, but it's what all 22 ports, sorry, it's what 21 of the 22 ports in Texas are. There is one port that is privately owned by BNSF and Union Pacific. So we have some reporting requirement to the state, but we're actually governed by 7 commissioners who are independently appointed, 3 by the city of Corpus Christi, 3 by Nueces County, and 1 by San Patricio County. I've got 2 commissioners who are, those commissioners can serve up to 4 full terms, 4 3-year terms. I've got 1 David Engel, who is terming out at the end of this year. I've got 1 Diane Gonzalez, who's a Nueces County appointee who will be up for reappointment this year. And then I have 1 Wes Hoskins, who just started. He's in the first year of his final term, and he's the San Patricio County appointee. Yes, I think that's it for that slide. So someone in Corpus back in the 40s and 50s must have had good connections in Austin, because we were granted the patents to the submerged land under our ship channel and along our ship channel, which is unique in the state of Texas. And so many ports in the state of Texas, in addition to assessing fees on their public docks, also tax the citizens in the areas where they live. So if you live in the Port of Houston, for example, they've done projects under general obligation bonds. And when you get your property tax bill, you'll get an assessment from the Port of Houston on there, right along with the ISD and everyone else. We have that authority. We don't use it because by having the patents to that submerged land, we're actually able to assess fees, whether it's a private dock or a public dock. And so if you're coming across a public dock that the port built, then you pay the full tariff, which right now is 12 cents per barrel on a barrel of oil or any other liquid product. So if you think a barrel of oil is worth $70, we tack on another 12 cents to move that product from land onto a ship. But if you're going across a private dock, we still get to charge you a tariff, and that's under something known as a franchise fee, and it's half of the normal wharfage rate. And so it's 6 cents per barrel right now, roughly 6 cents per barrel. We also charge what you see up there, dockage, which is the that goes to the ship owner, and they get charged for how long they're at the dock and how big they are. And then obviously if you're leasing land from us to build a facility, then you pay us a lease on land. And so we're self-funded. And that allows us to create infrastructure, additional infrastructure, and do maintenance on our existing infrastructure, pay our people, do all those things without having to do any taxing. So it's a little different than the way most ports get to do it. When I started 2 years ago, the vision of the port, and what you'll still see on the website, because a new vision I have to get approved by the Port Commission, which we'll do this year when we do the new strategic plan, which will be strategic plan 2029. And we'll do that by the end of the year. It says, become the energy port of America. That's it. And that was the aspiration 7 years ago. And I'll tell you in a second why, at least in a couple of niches, we succeeded that. When I took over 2 years ago, I found that wholly insufficient. It doesn't match my personal approach to how I want to manage things. And so I created this one. I've been using this one for the last 18 months or so. We're still going to be America's energy gateway. I want to focus on both existing and new customers. The focus for the last 5 years has, before I took over, had really been on only developing new customers and trying to bring in new business. I've got 20 customers basically who create $1 million or more of revenue to the port. 80% of my revenues though come from 10 customers, and you could probably drive through Ingleside or Corpus Christi and tick them off and come up with a pretty good list. And I would guess you're pretty close. I want to focus attention on our infrastructure, which had been sorely maintained for the last 30 years. Frankly, the port just didn't have the funds to do the maintenance it should have been doing. And so it was a bit like what we were doing at Sherwin, which was a 6-year plant. And that was holding a lot of together with duct tape and baling wire, right? So, but that's not how you maintain assets for 100 years plus, which is what we actually want. So, when we present our financials on Tuesday at the Port Commission meeting, you'll see that our income for the year is $10 million less than what it was last year. That's because we spent $10 million more on maintenance this past year than we had the prior year. And that's going to be a continuing trend throughout the my tenure, if I have my way. And then proactively engage in communities where we live and work. And so that's why I told you earlier, I'm always willing to come out here and talk anytime you have questions or want to hear from us. We do have, for our internal folks, we have what are known as our Seaport values, and that went in place right before I got there also. And whoever came up with it, I have no idea who it was, but it was very creative. That's safety, empowerment, accountability, preparedness, optimism, respect, and teamwork. Spelled Seaport. And I was like, how'd you guys get that? That's not how my mind works. So, we are sticking with that because I believe strongly in that. We've built a culture in the port around that. We do operate under environmental precepts. We're not a regulatory agency. We're not TCEQ. We're not the EPA. No one is beholden to us or gets a permit from us. But we do have the opportunity to set examples for what we'd like to see around air quality, water quality, those kind of things. My favorite one is the habitat creation. That is not mitigation. That is new habitat. We try to create 50 acres of new wetlands every 3 years. When I talk about infrastructure, the port itself has invested $1 billion in capital projects since 2015. So roughly the last 9+ years. The biggest one is the ship channel, which I've got a separate slide in here and can give you an update on that. At the top left, though, you see new gangways that we put in following an accident in Ingleside that took the life of one of our pilots. These gangways now reach the tallest ships that come into the inner harbor. We've built 3 of them so far and provide a secure and stable platform for accessing ships. At the bottom left is our bulk terminal, which I've got a separate slide on that because it has gone, we've probably invested $40 million in that in the last 5 years, including a new crane, and we've still got a lot to do. Create new laydown space. The oil dock 1 at the top is going to be the first oil dock in the inner harbor that has the ability to load ships to 54 feet. And it's pretty much ready to go and will be opened in May. And then in the bottom right, if you come to our commission meetings, that's the Ortiz Center, which is undergoing a full overhaul at this point. It's in one of our original warehouses, so 100 years old, but we turned it into the Ortiz Center roughly 30 years ago and had not received an update since then. And it was time to upgrade kitchen equipment and HVAC and ballroom floors and paneling and all kinds of things. So it should be back open in January. Right now, we have our commission meetings normally on the 3rd Tuesday of every month. It had to get delayed a week this month because we had conflicts with 3 of our commissioners, but they're open. They're in the RTA building downtown. When I talk about the biggest infrastructure investment we've made here, it's the ship channel improvement project. So this is a project that's been 38 years in the making. Feasibility study started 38 years ago. It was first funded by Congress in Word of 2007, so 18 years ago. Project partnership agreement got signed with the Corps of Engineers in 2017, the week after Harvey, believe it or not. And first dollars were allocated to it in 2018 in the president's budget. It has been a long slog. When we signed the project partnership, it was estimated at $188 million. It's going to end up being about $622 million. That gives you any sense of what inflation has done over the last 7 years. The first 2 phases were done. That goes all the way to Ingleside in July of 2023, which allowed the terminals at Ingleside to start fully loading ships to 54 feet. In the next 3 or 4 months after that, they take it kind of 1 foot at a time and test it out just to make sure they don't run into the bottom. And so they've actually had an advantage over our Inner Harbor customers now for a couple of years by being able to load those. The total cost savings are on the tune of about $150 million a year to our customers. By being able to load, fully load Suezmaxes or more fully load VLCCs, which are obviously the very large crude carriers that only come to Ingleside. Phase 3 is done. It's ready to be opened, and phase 4 should be done in the next week or two. I promised my PR team not to give an actual date of when we're going to cut the ribbon, but it's going to be somewhere around, I don't know, June 2nd. Yeah, don't tell them I said that. Which will then open the Inner Harbor up to loading deeper vessels as well. For them, we can't bring VLCCs into the Inner Harbor. They're too long to turn around, but they can fully load Suezmaxes. So that will be a cost advantage to them. Right now, Oil Dock 1, which is a public dock used by Sunoco almost exclusively, is the only one that will be capable of loading to 54 feet. We're modifying Oil Dock 14, which is used by a customer called Pin Oak. Valero is doing their own private dock to 54 feet. And so over time, we'll get the docks to 54 feet. You got the channel at 54 feet. You certainly want docks that can access that depth, or else it didn't make sense to spend that money. But if your dock wasn't built in the last 10 years or so, there's significant modifications, as any of you who probably own docks know. Another big project that we're working on is we are going to create an offsite rail yard, which then will probably open access to it also becoming a rail served industrial park of some sort. So when you think about the Inner Harbor, it 10 years ago had 52 miles of railroad track in it. We're now almost at 70 miles of railroad track in the exact same footprint. We have laid down railroad track in every flat piece where we could possibly put a railroad track. We moved 41,000 rail cars last year. That's as many as almost any port in the country other than the Port of Houston. And so we're at maximum capacity in the Inner Harbor for rail. So what we'd like to do is move some of the storage that's being done in the Inner Harbor by the 3 Class 1s that serve us offsite. And so this piece of property sits, it was really 32 individual pieces of property, but they sit between the CPKC line coming from the airport and the Union Pacific line, which is running up there, heading off the upper right toward Cal Allen. Down there where the green and the red cross, that's Robstown, Texas. They cross at grade right there. All 3 of the Class 1s will be ecstatic to have additional capacity for storage. It also allows CPKC to turn right and go north to Houston on the Union Pacific, which they currently can't do. They currently run almost to Laredo, turn around and come back into Robstown to take the loop. It will be good. We may move some of our agriculture out there. Right now, the cotton compress, which is located in Portland, accumulates bushels and bushels and bushels of cotton and puts it on trucks and sends it to Houston to get on rail cars. So we would consider building a cotton compress out there, for example, and then loading rail cars directly. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. I think reshoring of manufacturing is something that may be very possible under the current administration, so could fit out there as well. When I mentioned the bulk dock, our ship loader is coming up on 50 years old and is at some point going to just stop working, and so needs to be replaced. While we do that, we're also going to modernize that bulk terminal with a loop track and more storage and lay down space and lots of things that should have been built when it was built 60 years ago and just didn't happen. That is probably $150 million project right there. So that will speak for a significant amount of my cash. We had to make the strategic decision recently of whether we stay in the bulk in petcoke loading business or not. So petcoke is a byproduct of the refineries. Without producing petcoke, they can't run their refineries. So think black oil, it's a solid black that's left over when they make all the clean stuff like gasoline and diesel. It's in a solid form, looks like coal, mainly goes to Asia and gets used in steel furnaces. We are absolutely committed to serving our refinery customers. They're the backbone of industry in Corpus Christi. And so we kind of have to stay in this business. And so we will. One question we get asked all the time is about containers. So we have done a feasibility study that would indicate that we may have a potential opportunity to build a small container terminal. So if you think Houston is 3,000 20-foot equivalent units, so that's 3 million 20-foot equivalent units. So that'd be 3 million little boxes. So when you see a big box, that's normally a 40-footer. So that would be 2 TEUs, but they do 3 million. We would be looking at something in the range of 250 or 300,000 TEUs. So a tenth of the size of Houston. We're not looking to compete with Houston. The 54 feet of water in the channel, though, is attracting container shippers who don't currently operate on the Gulf Coast, who are looking for deep water, because that provides them cost savings as well. But don't want to go to Houston because of the congestion of Houston. Houston is extremely congested, both on the water side, the rail side, and the truck side. So we'll be looking for here. Not to mention the growth that's anticipated in the state of Texas is primarily in that corridor between San Antonio, let's call it Waco, so including Austin. It might make sense to bring those containers here. Lots of challenges. Container ships are also long, like VLCC, so you got to figure out where to turn them. And most container lines want containers then going back. So if they unload 1,000 containers here, they want 1,000 containers put back on, whether they're empties or full. We don't have enough manufacturing down here right now to justify that, but it's possible if we see reshoring and those kind of things that we could see where that might work out. The other one, if you're going to ask me, the state is going to pass a resolution, I believe, creating a blue ribbon commission led by the lieutenant governor and speaker, I believe, who is going to try to develop a second cruise port south of Galveston. So we are going to be getting asked that question. Again, we've looked at it twice in the past. There's a lot of challenges from the airport to what's known as the Jones Act, which is a early 1900s law that prohibits non-US flagged carriers from stopping in more than one US port, in addition to its embarkation port. And so if you get on in Galveston, that would leave the cruise lines with a decision they could either go to Corpus or New Orleans, not both. And so that's who you're in competition with for getting cruise ships to come here. That's a tough putt. I'm not saying we can't overcome it in some way, but we'll probably continue to look at it. We just passed it commission last month. Consulting dollars to go do a port-wide vulnerability index. I don't think anybody is unaware that sea levels have been rising. So how does that impact the construction of future docks? How does that impact the maintenance of existing docks? How does that impact operations in the port? And so we need to look at that from a risk management perspective in how we insure ourselves, but also how we do new construction. And any of these things that you see on here, well, for one, if you want, you've got a copy of the presentation. You're free to share it with anybody. But any questions that anybody wanted to talk about this, we can get more information. We're doing this in partnership with Conrad Blucher Institute at A&M Corpus Christi. Harbor Island desal. So let's talk about that one. So this is a map that we showed to a bunch of people. It's in the Corps of Engineers permit, which is out for public comment right now. I think everyone knows where the facility is proposed to be on Harbor Island. You'll recall that we had a 50 million gallon discharge permit from the TCEQ to discharge the resulting brine in the ship channel just to the south of Harbor Island. We have applied to the TCEQ as of April 1st. That permit is in, and it is posted on our website if anybody wants to see it before it even goes to public comment, for 100 million gallons of discharge offshore. It has been my position since I took this job that we want intake and discharge offshore. That is not changing. But I will tell you, the direction of my commission is that we retain the flexibility to use the 50 million gallon permit until such time as we have the 100 million. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And that's the biggest question mark, because the Corps permit permits both discharge locations. I think it's a valid conversation for us to have at the time that I get the 100 million, because I feel very confident that we will get the 100 million on what we're going to do with the 50. So whether that is a formal letter to TCEQ abandoning that permit or something like that. So when that time comes, we're extremely open to that position. Many of the people here tonight, I'm sure, are here to talk about exactly this. This is one where I don't think until we get the 100, we're going to be in full agreement, and we're aware of that. But I believe I have the support of my commission at this point to go offshore, and that's how we're modeling things, and that's how we're building things. And I can also tell you, if we do any deal with anyone to develop Harbor Island, East South, in the intervening period before I have the 100, I'm still not giving them the 50. So you have my word on that. And if you have any questions when we're done, let's talk through it. We did try to get out in front of the Corps of Engineers permit. And so before we did both the Corps of Engineers permit and the TCQ 100 million offshore, we met with all of the folks that are on this page. We went around in person to Nueces, to UTMSI, to the Hart Research Institute here, to the mayor and city manager, and then a big group with City of Portland, San Patricio Municipal Water District, and San Patricio County. And then the others, and City of Corpus Christi was in person as well. Our U.S. senators, U.S. rep, and our state senator were virtual. That was at the time that Senator LaMantia was still in office. I did get asked today when I briefed in San Pat by Adam Hinojosa's office. Had I met with them? We have. And so I need to update the slide, but sorry, I had already sent this over yesterday because that was a great catch by them. We've met with them a couple of times in Austin. And so this is where we are on all the permitting at this point. So the discharge, that application went in all the way back in March of 2018. Permit was received in December of 2023 and still has a administrative appeal in Travis County. The water rights permit, the 100 million, we put in February of 2023. They would only take it to administrative completion until we had the lease with the GLO, which we just signed in October. And so that permit's now under review, under technical review. Corps of Engineers permit just went in February, and that was for the request of the Corps was that we permit everything in the single permit. And so that's what we did. Intake, 2 discharges, pipes, the facility itself, if it touched wetlands, and pipeline back to Aransas Pass. And then we'll have to get a GLO lease as well for the discharge. I think that's everything. And then the 100 million gallon permit we submitted in April 1st, actually. And it is out there on our website, and I can send anybody that wants to know, I can send the link if it's hard to find. And that's it for my prepared remarks. Well, what else would you like to know?
First of all, thank you, Kent, for coming over. I felt like the timing was right, maybe a little a little late for us to be able to be here. But just in light of everything going on with permitting, particularly in DSAL, I thought it was a good time for you to come over and be able to present this information and give council the opportunity to review it and also ask questions. So,
Sure.
You guys, I think this is it. So fire away one at a time, and we'll see what we can get out of it.
When you talk about all this permitting, what's the timeline to do something like this?
For the permitting only?
No, to get water allocated.
So if you talk to the city, right, who's building a 30 million gallon per day east south in the Inner Harbor, I think they would tell you they're going to start in the middle of 2028. I think if you wanted to go full throttle from right now on Harbor Island, 2032. I mean, if I had to guess, I think your lead time, I think one of your longest lead times is going to be the power out there. So right now, because we're working on a kind of on a joint fund. Sorry, my allergy's been killing me. We're working on a joint funding deal with AEP right now to bring additional power to the Inner Harbor. And you'll see that on our commission in the next couple of months. The standard that they want to use right now, particularly in places that are exposed to the outside elements, is gas insulated substation. So GIS. That's where everything's in a building instead of standing outside. They're twice as expensive, maybe 2.5 times as expensive. It's very considerate of you. Well, I mean, being asked, I appreciate that. But the lead time on those is also 3 to 4 years. So, I think the permitting is going to go fairly quick. The Corps of Engineers, is kind of taking notice of the new administration's desire to have everything be a little more streamlined, and so they've basically given us a 7-month timeline for the Corps permit. TCQ, with it being offshore, I think should be able to get through that quickly, a year, I don't know, something like that. And then we'll see if it goes to a contested case or not, and who would have standing 1.8 miles offshore. So I think you've still got a year and a half of permitting, and then you've got at least, if you're just limited by the substation, at least 4 more years after that for construction. But that's, so I'm a finance guy, not an engineer.
Kent, with Perry and some of the bills that are coming in that we're seeing regarding the state kind of muscling in on the water and really wanting this big scale water up and down the Texas coast. Do you think that's what effect do you think that'll have on the permitting process and the timeline? Are they gonna start really pressuring the agencies to get this stuff through quicker, or what do you think is gonna happen with
My personal
timelines
opinion
on
is-
permits?
My personal opinion is yes, but TCQ should not be beholden to a political process.
Right.
But politics are politics, right? There's always pressure.
Mhm.
So I do think there might be a little bit of a faster timeline than what we would have seen from TCQ otherwise. I mean, Perry's plans are, the way he's drawn them out are extremely ambitious, and I mean, are for the next 70 years, right? They're not, none of this is gonna happen overnight, because it basically would call for 6 to 9 desal plants along the coast of Texas with a water infrastructure network that looks like your power distribution network.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine the cost of that, particularly as inflation continues to go up? So, it's a large, I mean, it'll be the biggest infrastructure project Texas has ever done. So, I don't know. We're just kind of cautiously watching and keeping an eye on it. And it could also be that, because I think the city has taken a lot of steps, right? The city of Corpus Christi, who's the water provider for the region, has taken a lot of steps to address short-term needs and potentially medium-term needs, right? So there may not even be a market for Harbor Island water for 20 years. I don't know.
Could you quickly address some of those corrections that they've made and what they're targeting as far as those modifications and improvements? I know didn't they do repairs to the Mary roads?
So they've gone through kind of 3 phases of repairs and upgrades to Mary roads, and so it's operating now at its design capacity, which is close to 80 million gallons a day. And so they're now taking, call it 2/3 of their water from the north, not from the west, which is a little, which is unusual for them. It's always been the opposite, but the lakes are at 17%, so there's not really that option. But the wells they're drilling along the Nueces are producing a lot of water. From what I've heard, very salty water. So they'll have to see how much of that they actually want to put back in the Nueces River itself. And then there are 2 really good sources of groundwater, one north of town and one south of town, that, in my opinion, should be fully evaluated. That's Evangeline and the Eshelman Boat Ranch, which is a long way from here. Evangeline is not close to Corpus, but close to the Mary Roads pipeline. So the improvements to the Mary Roads pipeline are really what's saving us right now, because they've gone from
Like 55 or so.
40, less than 50
Yeah.
to close to 80 over the last 6 to 8 months.
And that was strictly for maintenance, and I mean, they didn't increase capacity, did they, or what was it,
So
more of
they
a
haven't-
maintenance program?
They have increased some pumping capacity at a couple of places.
Right,
But they also had to do some maintenance. They had to do a full inspection, so they picked the line for the first time, I believe, since it had been built, to find exactly where the leaks were, right? Because finding leaks when it creates a big puddle is not the most efficient way to find leaks. But unfortunately, with a buried pipeline, sometimes that's that's what happens. So, you know, they made big strides there, more than I would have guessed when we started talking, because the city and the port have been pretty collaborative about. Matter of fact, when they did the Evangeline evaluation, for example, we had a person from the port, Sarah Garza, on the review team, not on the evaluation team, because that's not appropriate for us to be actually evaluating and casting a vote. But we helped with some of that review, and so that's another source of water that I think could be brought online pretty quickly. It's there. Sinton's already used it, so
Yeah.
um,
So Ken, if, say you build a desal plant, is the port gonna run that plant?
no, ma'am.
That's okay.
Nor is the port going to build that
Okay,
plant.
so what if,
Nor is the plant going to financially contribute to that
Okay.
plant.
so my question is, that other discharge into the channel is in there and you lease it or you whatever to somebody else.
We would have to either license, transfer, or some other mechanism, the 50 million gallon TCEQ permit. We are not going to do that. And so I think you will want some assurance beyond my word once we have the 100 million. And I think we'll be able to give you that.
So what if something happens to you in
Well,
the middle of all
this is where I said, I don't think we're going to be in full agreement on this, right? Because
Yeah.
I've got direction from my commission, which is water is crucial right now. And we want to preserve the flexibility
Sure.
of the 2 permits that we're working on. And so all I'm doing is operating under that direction. I also, though, have support when I go out in public and say, my intention is to take the discharge offshore. And I've got 2 very vocal commissioners who are Nueces County appointees, who are also backing me up on that. And I don't think I'm going to get objection on that. So we want to move as fast as we can to the 100 million, and then we can put that 50 out of everybody's discussion, because not that I don't love spending time with you guys, but you know, I don't like the churn that it's created. I literally probably spend 55 or 60% of my time on water, and I'm not a water provider. I'm not a
Right.
and I've told people this from the beginning. If I was in this role 5 years ago, we would have never gotten into this, but we're in it. We're going to finish the permitting. Somebody will either find it economically worth doing or not. If you look at the Region N water plan, it would suggest that the cost of that water is going to be $11 per thousand, and that's before you transfer it.
Yeah.
That's cheaper than Barney Davis, but that's far more expensive than Inner Harbor. So, you know, where do we go from there? Does somebody want to pay that for water? You wouldn't. You know, if you were a residential ratepayer, I wouldn't if I was a residential ratepayer. You would only want to put it into systems where you can blend it with $4 or $5 water, right? Which is what the city is doing with their Inner Harbor desal. The Inner Harbor desal is going to be close to $10. I mean, desal water is the most expensive water you can find, and so you don't want that to be your sole source of water. Some places it is, Saudi Arabia, Israel, you know, basically everywhere in the Middle East, it is their sole source of water, and they pay $10 a thousand, and that's just what it costs. My contention has always been that the most expensive water is the water you don't have, and so I can't predict 20 years from now whether somebody wants to pay for water that's piped all the way from Harbor Island. But I don't even know if Harbor, I guess that's partly Port Aransas, partly Aransas Pass.
Right.
Texas all the way to the middle of the state. I have no idea. But that's not going to be us. We're not going to be doing the commercial development. We're not going to be doing the construction. We're not going to operate. We will be a landlord to somebody. And otherwise, I mean, we'll treat it like any other commercial deal. We're a landlord port. The only thing other than the bulk terminal, we don't even operate, right? We're not, I don't think we would, even if we became a container port. I think we would lease land to a terminal operator. Anyhow, that's an aside, but sorry, long answer to the question of whether we were owning and operating.
Yeah. Well, I know at one time that on the permit applications, they were asking for who was, gonna operate it on the permit application. So
Someone has to sponsor it in the Region N water plan. We did that originally. Like I said, if I was in this role 5 or 6 years ago, I doubt we would have done that, because that's not the role of the port. No, that will get transferred to someone at some point who reaches a commercial deal to lease that land and tries to do that. And we'll create some sort of guardrails where they've got to get financing within, 2 years. They've got to have the engineering done in 18 months, or else it all terminates and reverts.
So
reverts
according
back
to
us.
the
But
permit, they're supposed to have like a concrete plan over there and a grout plan, or do you gonna have to get permits for all of those things? And
that's a good question.
So-
It won't be us.
it won't be you.
No. And if someone wants to do more than 100 million out there and needs permits, won't be us.
Okay.
We're at the limits of
That's your limit.
how much water permission we can do.
So what happens if you don't get the 100? I mean,
So
You
I
said
have
you
committed to the
believe it,
mayor
yeah.
previously, and including as recently as a week ago in her office, then that would be a conversation with all of us. I think if we don't get the 100 and the region continues to suffer from the water crisis that it's in, I think there would be a lot of pressure politically from the state and from even the city of Corpus Christi potentially to use the 50. So that's absolutely a risk.
and the 50 can't do the outtake and the intake. Why is it just if it's 100? What's the stopping it from being the 50? I mean, why can't it?
So you could conceivably, right? We've applied for 100 million intake. You
Right.
could conceivably just not use the 100, all of that 100, and
Right.
only use enough to make 50, and then use the 50 discharge if you didn't have 100 million offshore. We don't economically think that makes sense. So the smaller you make the plant, the more expensive it's going to get. It's already at $11 a thousand for
Yeah.
water. So I think it's fortunate for all of us who don't want to see that discharge in the ship channel. That the economics make more sense at 100 or 200 or 300 or whatever someone ultimately needs. The bigger you go, the cheaper it gets. You find economies of scale, and that's a lesson the Israelis hammer home anytime we've talked to them. They've been doing this longer than anybody in the world. They started doing desal back in the 60s. So got a lot of experience with it. So yeah, it continues to be a risk, and that's why I think once we get the 100, then we need to have that other conversation about how are we disposing of the 50 to make sure we're all comfortable and that doesn't get used in a way that we don't want it to.
Notice your slide, the 100 million said under technical review, so we're in the process, how much more do we have? I mean, if there's a lot of a lot of fight for this, I would think maybe this could get expedited to some way to get that 100.
Yeah, so we haven't actively asked for that, but I would not be surprised in the least if someone like Senator Perry, for example, is going to be advocating with TCQ to move faster on their permitting. So it's a big project though, and it's a complex project. And so I think the technical review of it is going to be significant.
What's the cost of the 50 versus the 100? A billion?
So sorry.
That's
Bill?
okay.
All right. Sorry, I was telling Bill earlier when we get in here, it's probably an extra $500 million to take it offshore, to take the discharge offshore. So you build the 50, it's probably something around a $2 billion plant. If I had to guess, if you get the economies of scale, but also pay the extra cost to go offshore with the discharge, it's probably a $3.5 billion plant
Mhm.
at 100. Something in that range, particularly by the time we build it. So it's in the water plan right now in today's dollars at 3.5 billion, which we think is a good bit high. But by the time you actually build it, inflation is going to catch up with that anyhow. So
In all the discussions we've had with Kent since he took over, we've been very clear about our intentions and our wishes to take everything offshore. That was in the agreement that we made when we settled our lawsuit with the port to take it offshore. The intake is offshore and they've committed to that and they've done that. It's the discharge now that's the next step. And where he can't give us any guarantees, he knows that that is our number one priority and our number one goal and that we're not changing our mind. Now, ultimately, we can't force them to do something, but they know that that's what we wish and that's what we hope they will do. And I feel like they've been very forthcoming and I appreciate the honesty about where you're at But I also believe that you fully intend and that you have commissioners on your court that fully intend to taking it offshore. Again, that's not 100% guarantee, but
No, and
it's further than where we were years ago.
sure. And listen, the last thing we need at this point is further lawsuits with either private groups or with the city of Port Aransas. That's not to the benefit of anybody. And frankly, the entire region, and I'm not just talking about Harbor Island now, the entire region needs to be working together to solve the water issues. And so the other thing I can tell you is I can only tell you my intent. And so I've told several people this. If anyone thinks that I'm the kind of person that would go out in public for 2 years and say one thing when I really meant to do another, you
Don't
clearly
know
don't
very well.
understand me. So
Mhm.
I'll let you talk to my mom.
I think everybody, you know, I've
What's
had a
your
lot
number?
of people come and talk to me, you know. And I think everybody's concern is the same, you know, we're a town that thrives on tourism and fishing as our life here and our restaurants. And I think everybody's concern is just not messing up what we have worked so hard to create
Absolutely.
here. And I think that's what everybody that comes and talks to me, that's their main concern.
Sure. And I know many of you have access to my commissioners as well,
Right.
so you should continue to talk to them, right? Because I work at the direction of the commission. I think I get the opportunity to set that direction in a lot of cases I don't, but I've been pretty adamant and vocal, not just out here in public, but also in private with them that we want it offshore. So to the extent you have influence with them, you should continue to stress that message also.
Any other pending plans for the property there?
On Harbor Island?
Mhm.
No. We don't have anything planned at this point. So. If you could get a couple of whooping cranes to land on it, that would solve a lot of problems.
Lots of nesting. That would.
Yeah.
You'll have any other questions? And I think that Kent would obviously let you contact them at other times. to ask
Absolutely.
After the
Sure.
day, when-
Absolutely.
later on tonight, in the middle of the night. and, Remembered, I should have asked this.
I can say he's always been open to talking to any of us.
I try to. We want to maintain an open dialogue with the communities that we're impacting, and keeping in mind also, you know, we've faced a lot of opposition in Ingleside to try to do a solar farm. Just a lot of distrust of the port. And then I go back and I'm like, well, how many projects has the port done in Ingleside? How many of those industries are actually on port property, like leasing from us? None. But we have a wide, when people see industry and people see the impacts, we end up absorbing that and trying to defend that and trying to make sure that it's done well. And like I said, we're not a regulatory agency, but we do have the ability to influence. And so continue to try to influence for good.
Communication's key. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I don't, not to tell you guys your business, but at some point, you guys may want to come over and make public comment at our port commission. And also, want to be, to say, hey, we're serious about this and this is what we want. We hear from members of the Port Aransas Conservancy at times, and we also engage them outside of the commission meetings, but I don't think it would hurt to have city officials there also. Just my 2 cents. Anything else?
Don't nod at me, Tom.
Okay. I've sat in quite a few of those meetings, but I come and speak as a resident when I'm usually over
Which
there.
we're always happy to hear as well.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, with that being said, I don't think anybody is unsure of your position either. So
Well, and we've put it out there too in our legislative priorities. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've made it, I think we've made it clear. So,
absolutely.
all right, anything else?
Just tell me when the next time you want me back.
Okay, we'll get you on
Thanks,
the
sir.
calendar.
Thanks for coming. We
Thank
very
you.
much.
We
So much.
appreciate it. Okay, real quickly, because we still have a full audience and before we move on to citizen comments, I just want to make everybody aware, because some of you may not be here at the last moment of our meeting, but our Assistant City Manager, Lawrence, is leaving us as of tomorrow. And it's very sad because we're going to miss him. We have loved having Lawrence represent the city, and I think he's done an outstanding job. But he has taken a different path in life and has to go away from Port Aransas for a little bit. So for those of you who've never met him, Lawrence, please stand up. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to say hello and goodbye all at one time. And thank you. We have gifts and more things to say about him later, but I just wanted you all to know, if you see him on the street between now and tomorrow at 5, now I don't know when you're officially leaving, but anyway, we're going to miss you, Lawrence. And anyway, I know. Yes. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll leave a picture of you in the hall. Okay. All right. So we'll move on real quick. Item 4, citizen comments and reports. I do have several, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like all on the same topic. So I will have the first, no particular order, but please, Miss Kathy Fulton, you're allowed to come to the front.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kathy Fulton and I live, whatever, PO Box 457. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be as nice as here as everybody else was. I'm gonna have to say this. Number one, it's nice of you to come on the last comment day right now of the comment period. When you could have come, like, say, last month when it started, it would have been more helpful to get people informed, because it's a 468-page application that apparently nobody on here has even read. So I've wasted quite a bit of time on this. And so I want to say I'm asking Mr. Britton to tell the Army Corps of Engineers to extend the comment deadline a minimum of 30 days. And you can do that since you're the applicant, you can make that request and get it done. That would be the fair thing to do for a lot of people, because that is a very technical application. And don't tell me that 14-foot tunnels isn't going to be somewhat of a problem that we need to be a little bit more. It all looks nice and fluff on there, but it's not that easy. And there is no discussion about depression issues and everything else under those tunnels, especially going under St. Joe Island. That being said, the other thing I am asking is that you do come over here and do a public meeting where the public gets to quiz the port and question the port and express our concerns. Now, I'm going to be at the meeting on Tuesday, as you can well bet, because I do attend those meetings. And so I want to make this clear. In the application, numerous repeated 468 pages, it is again and again driven home that the port's preferred alternative is alternative 4. Alternative 4 includes both the inshore and offshore discharge, and it would be used from the very beginning. It would continue to be used through the process, Kent, in the application. It is clear. If it's not supposed to be in there, then the only best solution is to remove it from the application. That's how that works. If you want us to calm down, that's how you're going to get us to calm down. I think we've been clear, take it offshore since the very beginning. So I am asking you to get it off the application. That is the way to do it. Vacate that permit, because you know that Port Aransas Conservancy is going to drag this out for you. I mean, I can guarantee it. So I need y'all to understand that is what's in the application repeatedly. That little thing he showed you, did you see the little red line that goes into the ship channel? We have proven, and it's been repeated even in a study you guys paid for, that Dr. Nielsen said, don't do it. Y'all need to do a lot more evaluation, and I have that study, and it is thick. And Dr. Nielsen at UTMSI said, the advice here is no. So please, y'all need to, this isn't just about, this is about telling the port, no inshore discharge. We have got to protect this. The rest of this about the construction, that is something that does need to be discussed over here. That is something that really needs to be discussed. If y'all haven't looked at the beautiful pictures, and I'm saying that as a joke. They're not so beautiful. They're really not. And it's very worrisome. I do not understand how 100-foot deep vertical shaft, 35 feet wide, that's gonna have all this muck pulling out of it, and then they're gonna do this and that with the muck. There isn't enough room
Kathy,
for the
let's
muck.
wrap it up.
All right, there isn't enough room. There's a lot of things. I've given some of y'all some information. I wish y'all would ask those questions. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Charlie Stovall.
Hi there. I'm Charlie Stovall. I live at 420 Ocean View here in Port Aransas, and I'm going to echo a little bit of what Kathy said. Also, I think the 14, just think about a 14-foot diameter pipeline going out several miles, two of them, what that could do to you know, our waterways, and what the disturbance that might have. And then the muck soil that Kathy mentioned, it says in the permit application that it's going to be removed and maintained on site during construction and deep watered, similarly to dredge material with a deep watering outfall structure into Redfish Bay, adjacent to the Aransas Channel. What's that going to do to seagrass? What's that going to do to all the, you know, the larvae, all the fish that feed off of all that? We don't really know. This 31-acre site on Harbor Island is on ground that has already been determined to be contaminated. We're going to disturb that. What's going to happen to that soil? And in the application, the port is saying an EIS is not required. Really? For something this big, there's not a requirement for an EIS? And again, we do need a public meeting and have citizens, not just council, ask questions of the port. And I agree that the brine discharge should never, ever, ever be in the Aransas Pass Inlet. Don't make Port Aransas become another Port A like Port Arthur. And that's what we're going to look at if we continue with this.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Dara Pena, you're
Thank you,
next.
sir.
Hi, my name is Dara Pena. I am a homeowner here, and my heart and soul is here in this town. I also live elsewhere. But for 50 years, I've had a home here, my family. But I have a couple of questions, mainly for Mr. Britton.
Actually, the agenda item is to address city council for comment. So
Okay,
it's
then
not,
Okay,
this isn't the proper channel to direct them to, you need to direct them to council. Thank you.
okay. Well, this can apply to anybody, really. I would like to know why, after all the testing that's been done, all the scientists that have been, the local scientists that we have here, probably a good 10 or 12 of them, they're accredited, they live here. Their whole life has been just the study of the ecosystem here. It seems to me that all of their input has been dismissed by the port. I mean, they have told over and over and over what will happen if something like this should be built. And if the brine goes, it is the most super sensitive ecosystem on the Texas coast. So, you know, it's a shame that this area has to be devastated. And, you know, it's the construction, the noise, the emissions, it's just, I can't even imagine. My other question would be, or is, has anyone from the port been to Carlsbad, California to confer with those people over there? I mean, if you get online and you study it, they've had so many problems. Technology is obsolete in a couple of years. They have breakdowns. They have trouble getting people working there. it is on a geological much better situated place. It's not sitting right in the Gulf of Mexico like Harbor Island is. It doesn't have the protection, which would be devastating. If it does come to pass, I think option number 2 or alternative number 2 would be the best way to go. And, you know, Mr. Britton made it clear that he would do everything in his power to keep that inshore discharge. But I think, like you said, Joe Ellen, anything could happen once somebody takes over. There is no promise. So I'd have to think twice about that.
Thank you. Dorothy Lindner.
Hello, thank you for having me. Dorothy Lindner, I live at 824 East Avenue C. From the discussion this evening, it seems like there will be a desal plant on Harbor Island. That seems like it's going to go forward, which is very sad because as was previously mentioned, our little town, our families haven't had a house here for, over 60 years, will not be the same. It's already kind of being taken over by big industry in Corpus, Ingleside, all of that, Portland. But we still have this little enclave of beauty here, and that's going to change if the desal plant comes. And from what I've read, it's the oil and gas industries that want that desal water. I don't know that it's going to come to us. It's going to go to them. They can afford the very, very expensive desal water. You and I, we cannot. So anyway, that's all I want to say. And thank you for listening. And thank you for thinking about this. I think the port's very powerful, and they have lots of power and lots of money. So I think it's going to go forward, and which will be very, very, very sad for Port Aransas.
Thank you. Okay, and finally we have Luke Daly. This is the same email you sent us, right, Luke? Okay. It looked familiar, like I'd read it, so
That's
just check.
right. Luke Daly, 619 East Avenue B, Port Aransas. I've been asked to speak for the Port Aransas Conservancy and just fill you in on what's really going on. On April 7th, Port Aransas Conservancy's attorneys filed a written request to the Army Corps of Engineers for an extension of the 30-day public comment period and a public hearing on the permit, which was filed March 18th by the port. That we have found out has been denied. We need the city to once again request an extension of that with the cooperation of the port. I heard it was a 650-page document. I have not been wading into it. But I do know from 5, 6, 7, 8 years of studying this desalination that the first proposal over 5 years ago was for a 50 million gallon per day facility, which would have discharged 95,600,000 gallons per day of brine and waste chemicals into the Corpus Christi Ship Channel across from Roberts Point Park. The new application is for 100 million gallons per day production and 191,200,000 gallons per day discharge. Two 14-foot diameter tunnels would stretch 6.7 miles from Harbor Island to 1.3 and 1.8 miles southeast of San Jose Island, not as far offshore as our scientists have recommended. One for intake, one for discharge. This comes straight from our attorney's filing. However, the port's project plans make it clear that the second outfall diffuser is proposed in the Corpus Christi Ship Channel, just south of the confluence with the Aransas Channel and Lydia Ann Channel. The new plan continues to include the major, but not the only objection by residents, visitors, wildlife, and other scientific experts. Discharge close to and into the main source of productivity and connectivity with the Gulf of Mexico for all fish and invertebrate populations in the entire region. That's all the wetlands and bays. This inlet compounds and magnifies marine life abundance, so the impact of activities such as dredging and discharging pollutants are disproportionately greater than what would occur in other areas. Furthermore, the port also simultaneously plans to deepen the ship channel from 54 to 81 feet deep with a 29,000-foot extension of this deepening into the Gulf, which would increase storm surges by 24% into our city. They also propose a crude oil terminal with 2 berths for very large crude carriers, super tankers. Another entity, Axis Midstream Holdings, proposes to construct facilities and pipelines to store, transport, and load crude oil into marine vessels. Your responsibility is to protect the health, safety, and welfare, as well as the livelihood of citizens of Port Aransas. Shouldn't you tell the port CEO that these are not projects that are welcome or beneficial to us? Please request an extension of public comment period from the city of Port Aransas and a public hearing. Thank you.
Okay. That is all of the citizen comments and reports. We're going to move on to item 4, which is an executive session. The city council will conduct a closed executive session in compliance with section 551.074 personnel to conduct the city manager's annual evaluation. So for those of you who've never been here before, that means everyone has to leave. We lock the doors. We have a closed executive session, and then we'll let you know